You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of the renewable energy transition and electrifying everything everywhere. Switched On is proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Switched On is also brought to you by Goodwe, the all-in-one ESA battery system safely powering Aussie homes, lowering bills and providing energy independence. And Switched On is also brought to you by Amp Control, an Australian manufacturer helping to power the energy transition. Welcome back to Switched On Australia. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're digging into the numbers behind what Australian households are feeling about their energy bills. Energy Consumers Australia has just released its latest Consumer Energy Report Card. This is a survey they do every 6 months of more than 4,500 households across the country, and there's plenty worth unpacking in it. Bill stress has eased ever so slightly this time round, but concern with the cost of electricity remains high. Renters are reporting almost double the bill difficulty of homeowners, and despite years of attempts by consumer groups to make it easier for households to engage with the energy system, to compare plans, to simplify bills, install batteries and get smart about tariffs, the numbers suggest most Australians actually want less to do with the energy system, not more. All of this is landing at a pivotal moment for consumer energy. The AEMC's network pricing reforms has recently been finalised. We've also got new solar sharer offers that are rolling out, offering 3 hours of free electricity in the middle of the day, and a consumer duty is on the cards. Joining me to talk through it all is Ashley Bradshaw, Executive Manager of Analysis and Advocacy at Energy Consumers Australia. And we started our conversation with what first struck me about this latest consumer survey. Even though there's a slight drop in households reporting difficulty paying their energy bill, people are still rationing basic comfort at the same high rate. 62% of households avoid heating or cooling to save money.
Yeah, you sort of see we benchmark concern for cost of electricity much against very other areas of concern for people, such as mortgage interest rates, healthcare system, things like that. And it always sticks out to me how high the cost of electricity is compared to lots of things. So
Yeah.
to give you some color into that result, it's always very interesting when you dig into it more and you ask some follow-up questions on that. Yes, there's concern about their own electricity bills, right? But you actually see it can often be a lot broader. It can actually be concern for others or concern for the impact it has on businesses or the economy as a whole. So that's a really interesting kind of nuance I kind of find out of that, how people kind of view electricity and how they view it really as an enabler of success of cost of living, the economy as a whole, and things like that.
Yes.
Know that some of the results there's a bit of a seasonality effect. You can kind of see, so you think about it in summer, if you've got an aircon, you're probably going to have a higher bill than in winter, for example, when you maybe for a lot of homes that use gas for heating. So some of that concern can sort of just change given the actual time of year that the survey was introduced. So this survey was undertaken in March, April, so it would have been a lot of people just coming off their summer bill. So it can be different to how people experience it in winter. We do acutely see that there is a quite material portion of our community that do really struggle to afford their electricity bills, or it's putting a lot of stress onto other being able to afford other things, or we're hearing some really sad things about people not using heating or cooling. I believe when I was last here and chatted to you, I talked about those findings where we found that we kind of estimated that around 1 in 5 households may be vulnerable to or experiencing energy hardship. That's often really, really sad to hear, but it's clearly resonating in the statistics you mentioned at the start, that a lot of people are concerned about and understand the real impact that energy prices have on their neighbours and their community as a whole.
A majority of those who affordability is really affecting, they say they've avoided heating or cooling to save money.
Yep.
What is it, 21% unable to afford other essential expenses?
Yep.
It's not good, is it?
It's really sad. Yeah, I get really sad every time I see these findings, and they don't change very much.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, it really highlights that just the different experiences of people in our community. Some people are doing okay, but there is a large group of people that are really doing it tough. And energy in particular puts acute pressures on them.
The other thing that's really stuck is energy literacy. Only 29% say they definitely know how their electricity bill is calculated, and 23% know what a retail tariff is. I know you guys have done a lot of work in trying to push for simpler bills. Why do you think basic energy literacy shows almost no improvement?
Yeah, probably firstly, when you interpret this finding, it can maybe overstate parts of it. So maybe when we say a retail tariff, okay, they may know what their price is or their plan is, right? But they may not have that jargon or lingo. So just note that
Right.
kind of context with it. But yes, you see I think the straight up one of, do you know how your home electricity bill is calculated? You do see that 13%, give or take, households, around 10% to 13% of households in a given survey say they don't know this at all, which is
Yeah.
very, very interesting. And then you have a majority that say they have some idea but are not sure. Look, we don't think everyone needs to be an expert on these things.
No.
It probably just shows, it gives you the indications of the need to make things simpler and more streamlined, not lead to have some complexity in the pricing structures that doesn't need to be there. I often think about energy is interesting in that it can be different to other services where if you think about, say, your mobile phone, your bill, your bill is your bill, right? It's
Mm.
$40 a month or whatever it is. Your energy plan is, there's this fixed charge, which may be similar to that $40 a bit, a month sort of charge, but then you have this variable charge over the top, which has a level of complexity. And then if you have a customer on a time of use tariff, you then have other complexity over the top. So yeah, it's just naturally a different thing. It's quite hard. And I mean, it's even hard for a lot of people in the industry to sort of follow these things
Absolutely.
and work out what actually is the best plan for them. Yeah, it's actually really hard.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I know there have been these attempts to make them bills more simpler and easier to understand. But, with the different offers, and now we've got the solar sharer offer coming in, I suppose my concern is that it's just making it more complex.
Yeah, that's a fair concern. We really commend the SSO and what it's essentially trying to do, and how we view it is.
This actually, just to explain, the SSO, the solar sharer offer, which is essentially something the government has mandated that all the big retailers have to offer 3 hours of free electricity during the middle of the day.
Thank you for explaining that. And yes, I think I think in essence, to me, it's sort of it says, look, hey, we've got an incredible amount of solar, and in particular rooftop solar. So much so that wholesale prices are very low or even negative in the middle of the day. So there actually can be broad societal benefits or low cost of people using electricity in the middle of the day. And that's a really great carrot to give people about what the transition to this decentralized renewable system can be for people, right? It's actually kind of interesting how it puts things on its heads. Sometimes actually consuming can be a good thing. And we've kind of told people for years, consumption and using less is good. And that obviously is a principle that should remain. But it's interesting now how, sometimes when you consume can be equally important and actually can be benefits of increasing consumption at a certain period of the time. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Two things stick out to me about the actual design of the solar share offer. One of them you mentioned at the start, which is around the complexity of it. If you actually look at the design, it's not just a free energy in the middle of the day plan. It's a
No.
free energy in the middle of the day plus a lot more expensive energy at night plan.
Yeah.
And in some instances, it can have maybe 4 or 5 different price levels, which, makes it a bit complex to your point and sort of hard for people to maybe understand whether it's good for them, or maybe, if they see a higher it's not a high fixed charge, a higher peak charge, that can maybe be a behavioral thing that may get people concerned not to jump onto it.
Mm.
The other thing I notice is it is different across each network, and sometimes, so there are networks generally arranged by jurisdiction. In some states and territories, there are multiple networks within each state. The default market offer looks at networks and regions in New South Wales, South Australia, and Southeast Queensland. I think the thing that sticks out to me is, the SSO is designed differently for customers on each specific network, and even for customers in New South Wales, you have one state there, you have 3 different SSOs. So that also adds a level of complexity and probably is a barrier to having a national communications and comms plan to kind of explain to people what it is hard, because and even if you actually look into it in more detail, in South Australia, the free power period is actually an hour later in the day than other
I noticed
countries.
that. Yeah.
And there were good reasons for that. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just from a consumer's perspective, you can just see, to your point, the complexity that it creates, and it'll be interesting just to see the adoption of these specific plans. There's also worth recognizing that some retailers have already been providing these free energy plans already. So maybe may choose those existing offers or offers by other retailers versus opting into the solar share offer.
Do you think that this complexity is really going to hold people back from joining, and also when they realise that they might be paying higher charges in the evening, which a lot of the plans will be doing in order to claw back some of the money that they lose during the day? Do you think that this is going to deter people, and it's not going to do what the government clearly wants it to do, which is to soak up more of the solar during the middle of the day?
Regardless of whether people sign up to it, I think there is still a great benefit of signaling this to people. And an additional benefit is, it might tell people that, hey, there actually is quite a significant amount of rooftop solar out there. Maybe you don't need to get it yourself. Maybe you can, do other ways. Maybe get a battery and look at a plan like this or things like that. Yes, I think you can probably be safe to assume, and I've looked online at some, forums where people have chatted about it. Yeah, people have clearly highlighted the complexity of it and the fact that you have those higher peak rates as being a barrier to them signing up to it. Additionally, like I said, you see people saying, oh, well, there already is free power plans available. For example, OVO Energy, which is a relatively large retailer in Victoria, has had that plan on offer for about 2 to 3 years now. So you kind of hear that discussion as well. The people are saying, oh, I looked at the government regulated one, but then I found these other sort of plans and that's better.
I think my concern also is perhaps that the solar share offer, in combination with some of the other current reforms, more benefiting people who are probably already going to be fine. I can see how it will really benefit people who have batteries, because they'll be able to stock up on the free power during the day and then use it during the evening. And if they've got solar, which is a high proportion with people with batteries, they're going to be able to charge the car as well.
Yeah. Again, I kind of view it
and that's not a bad thing if you've got the setup, but I suppose it was sold as something that was going to help people who didn't have these energy resources, didn't have the solar and didn't have the batteries.
Yeah, I share similar thoughts to you, that it's probably most attractive to. So it's most attractive to people that have either a large load that they can program to run at that time. So you mentioned an EV, that's one of them, or a battery, which can then shift use. There might be some cases of people that do shift work. Say they work at night, maybe they're home during the day, and they can run appliances in the middle of the day, and actually it would be quite beneficial for them, I'd say. That said, though, there's the equity impact of there's the fairness consideration around who can benefit and who can't. I view it a little bit differently in that, there can be broad societal benefits of people with batteries soaking up rooftop solar in the middle of the day, and then not, either exporting it at night,
and not drawing on
grid, or where often it can be a lot of gas use at that period. So we've got to be aware of that in terms of how we describe these kind of fairness issues, and that basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the price levels actually fair. Don't over encourage something, or make sure that whatever the benefit is that people receive from shifting load and things like that is fair, because then if you do so, then everyone wins.
Yes.
from it, really. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a similar issue with the installation of batteries has just gone absolutely berserk over the last year with the
Yeah.
cheaper home batteries
Yep.
plan, and that actually is already without people joining onto virtual power plants and having somebody control all of those batteries to help the grid. It's
Yeah.
already helping the grid, So it's what the individual does. It's a real case of how what the individual does can really do something for the greater good.
100%. Yeah, 100% agree.
Which is interesting what you said earlier, wasn't it? That there is this broader concern that has been identified in your survey for others. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think, energy is, it's heating, it's cooling, it's cooking, it's community, it's the lights outside your house, it's powering, your local cafe and things like that. Yeah, it's such a, I mean, it's called an essential service for a reason, because it's very essential to everything. And also, energy use is just welfare enhancing, it's the ability for people who didn't used to be able to heat or cool their homes to be able to do that. There's just so many benefits to energy. So it really comes through. People understand the benefit of it, and in particular, the benefit of energy prices being low cost and affordable.
Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll be back right after this message from one of our sponsors.
G'day, Alex Carey here. The Goodwe ESA all-in-one home storage solution is here, and it's a game changer. It's packed with market-leading features, full home backup and 6-level battery protection. With up to 48 kilowatt hours in a single stack, the ESA is a breeze to install with no gateway needed. The Goodwe ESA series is available now and priced to cover the 2026 drop in the rebate. Visit goodwe.com.au for more information.
My guest today on Switched on Australia is Ashley Bradshaw. He's the Executive Manager of Analysis and Advocacy at Energy Consumers Australia. And Ashley is giving us the ins and the outs on the ECA's latest Consumer Energy Report Card. This is their regular survey on household attitudes to energy and energy bills. Now, your report also found that only a little more than a half say that they clearly understand why Australia is transitioning to clean energy. And also just a little over a half say that they understand how they could reduce their household's carbon footprint. What's failing here? The messaging, the messenger, or the fact that there isn't a clear answer to give people?
Probably like anything, it's complex and it's a case-by-case basis. It's been well known for a while that, people have different views on climate change and things like that. And it comes through. Just people are different. Definitely can be a better communications campaign. And we think that's really important for things like that are really going to impact people. We're thinking we're going to have to get everyone to transition their petrol or diesel car to an electric one. If we're going to reach net zero by 2050, we've got less now than 25 years to do that, 24 years. I'm sure you and your listeners are aware of the need to transition gas out of homes. That requires a lot of knowledge and investment and capability from households to do so. So ECA definitely does want to see governments to invest in this era and, really tell consumers about these future things coming, but also helping people understand the benefits of it too. It's not just about necessarily a climate thing. It's also about making your bills cheaper as well.
And also understanding why Australia is transitioning to clean energy really helps people understand or take more of an interest in Australia's energy system, which ties into some other findings from this current report, and that is that most only want a basic relationship. Most Australians want a basic relationship with their energy system. They just want a good, and this is all fair enough, by the way. They want a good price, reliable supply, and good customer service. But the others, 41%, want an active relationship. Now, I do find that interesting because I do think that you want more of an active relationship when you understand fully why Australia is transitioning. Do you think?
Yeah, so we've presented some research on that a while ago, which definitely showed that relationship between, knowledge and support for the transition and being engaged. So our listeners can understand what we meant by an active relationship as we defined it in the survey. We define an active relationship as being interested in things like having a choice of different tariffs, time of use tariffs, changing when you use energy, being able to monitor your energy use in real time, or being able to export it, at different times. So those fine. So yeah, so roughly, like you said, around 6 out of 10 households say for them, look, ultimately energy is just a basic thing. I kind of interpret that as saying, people just, for them, it's just a bill, right? That's all it really is. They want the lights to stay on. They want a good price. So that is the majority. So that's one finding. But I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that 40% of people are saying they want these other things. That does
Yeah,
actually
sure.
show a very high level of engagement. I dare, maybe we should do it in a future survey, but if we ask people if they wanted an active relationship with their, water service and shift, I'd be interested to see how many people say they wanted an active relationship. So basically it highlights that,
Yeah.
while I say caution, yes, we do see that there is this low literacy and low engagement understanding. That's right. I also want to reiterate, there is a very large amount of people that are engaged. And you've talked about the battery program, like that really reflects that. And, we all know that we have, rooftop solar in 1 in 3 homes now. So there is this big group of people that are interested and engaged. So we shouldn't underestimate that too. At the same time, from a policy perspective and from ECA's perspective, it's sort of, how do we respect those that don't really want to be engaged and just give them a fair basic price, but allow people that want to do these other things to do it, and make sure what they do is to the benefit of everybody.
Yes, no, I think that that's a really good point. I suppose my concern is whether or not the market is just building a system that most consumers have explicitly said they don't want, or or do we have to accept that it is complex and we just have to find ways of bringing everybody along with us?
Yeah, so I think the way we sort of see it, that's, we need to make sure there remains to be access for every household to some default, easy to understand retail plan, right? Probably a combination of a fixed charge and a flat consumption price. That probably remains suitable for most people. People sort of get that, that should remain. We're seeing these emerging products. You mentioned VPPs, battery products, time of use plans, things like that are more for that active market. The market's evolving and providing people with those products. We're seeing EV plans as well. Yeah, we can sort of do both. It's just making sure we're everything remains opt-in at the household level. Yeah, and it's advertised as, there's choice for people is an important thing as well. We just don't want anyone to be forced onto something.
No, but as a consumer advocate group, I suppose it's important to emphasise that the energy consumer isn't a single homogenous group, is it, that you can
Yes.
advocate for? I'm just sort of really aware of how different energy consumers are.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. And I think the other thing I'd say is, okay, so people may assume that the household with solar and a battery is this person that is interested in this active relationship.
Yeah.
That is not the truth. Quite a lot of people still say energy for them is a basic bill for them too. So that raises some important, considerations around, like customer protections, right? People with solar and batteries aren't necessarily savvy people that are optimizing, when they do things.
Yeah.
We asked a question to people, do you know your battery's capacity, like how big it is? And I can't remember the exact figures, but a large portion said they didn't know
Yeah, right.
how big they've. So that sort of highlights where, a portion of people are out. So, so that means there's going to be a need for products at all ends of the spectrum. So, some people may like being on amber, I guess, and being a trader. Some people like with their battery and solar probably just want to set and forget sort of thing. Yeah, people are extremely different and in lots of different ways. It's quite amazing, the diversity of people and experiences and how they view things.
Yeah. The only thing is that as more people develop or install the energy, consumer energy resources, whether or not that gap between those who have them and those that don't, it is an issue which we have to keep talking about and keep finding ways that it doesn't become such a gulf.
Yes and no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes back to a point I made before. It's so in the energy system of 15 years ago, this system was pretty simple. It was large-scale generators that Jen Taylor owned, AGL and Origin owned big power plants and sold people electricity. Now, energy is being sold by your neighbor to you, right?
Yeah.
Now there is a fair price for that person to sell their electricity. Now, if we looked at the bill outcomes of these two people, you might go, oh, the person with solar and batteries is paying a lot less than the other household, and that's a bad thing. But again, if that can be a good thing, that's money that isn't going to invest in large scale generation or going to big business. There's lots of benefits to that. Yeah, we're kind of seeing actually that the bill reduction is due to them providing a service to their community. Yeah, so we just need be caution. Yeah, it's for us. It's often about thinking about just right sizing that benefit, making sure it's reflective of the benefit to society. So if people are doing a great thing, retailers should 100% reward people for it. But equally, we don't want it to be, we don't want to over subsidize something because then we get oversupply and actually, it's not good for everybody. So it's often, just about making sure prices and structures are just right sized so that, when people are reducing their bill, it's reflective of the benefit that all of society gets from it.
Now, last week, the ACCC brought out its electricity market inquiry report, which found that household batteries and new energy services complaints about them have increased by 107% over the last 12 months. And that's since pretty much since, July last year when the cheaper home batteries came into force. And, these systems have been installed quite rapidly, and there have also been complaints reports to other consumer bodies that have increased. How concerned are you about these sorts of things happening, this increase happening?
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to that. Firstly, it comes back to that previous point of, we think maybe the household with solar and batteries doesn't need protection or they're doing good. Sometimes no, they can be in vulnerable circumstances and maybe maybe their battery doesn't work. Maybe they're on a plan that isn't fair or these other sorts of things. Without knowing the detail as much as the ACCC, it seemed like, there was probably a mad rush to get battery installations done before that May deadline when the subsidy ran out. I say that as someone that did that myself.
Yeah.
If you probably get installs doing rush jobs potentially and things like that. So without being fully aware of the complaints, the increase in complaints probably likely reflects the huge numbers of installations that happen in a short period and potentially some issues of installers not, properly installing a battery, rewiring it wrong, the battery not working how people expected it to. I know from my experience and from experiences from friends, yes, it didn't work initially. It took a lot of back and forth with the supplier, the installer of the battery to get them to come back and fix it. Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy issue because you have the installer themselves who can often be a sparky that come in and install it, but then they mightn't have ever worked with that battery before. So then they've got to talk with the battery supplier who might be someone from an international company. So it's this chain of you don't know who to contact. The supplier blames the battery provider. The battery provider says talk to your sparky. So that can be quite hard to navigate.
What needs to change to try and streamline some of these systems to ensure that consumers aren't hard done by and that they don't end up with a battery that either doesn't work or doesn't work optimally?
Yeah, probably the most obvious one is probably two things I would say. It comes across in good standards, right? So making sure that batteries that are subsidy eligible, it meets certain performance standards, and I'm not saying they don't. One thing we see a big benefit for is ECA's talked about this idea of a one-stop shop idea. So it's something that the Victorian government has introduced. The SCC's introduced this. Basically it gives you tailored advice for what you need to do in your home, and then it connects you with trusted, reputable suppliers. So that can be a benefit rather than maybe someone. I'm sure you may have been given these too, spanned by Facebook ads, for cheap batteries and things like that, connecting people to reputable licensed providers and things like that, because that can benefit it too. Yeah, so the thing comes down to giving people the agency and the trusted advice for, for other things like, oh, hey, do you actually need a 50 kilowatt battery? Maybe you don't. Or hey, what we like about the SCC model and these ones that look holistically at a house, we can maybe give people more broader advice. Or maybe, for example, hey, if your circumstances, maybe a battery isn't suitable, but maybe, hey, you've got a gas hot water system that's old, replace that. And that can give you a big benefit. So yeah, we'd like to see all state governments really invest in this area and help people navigate this really complex thing.
Now, another report that has recently come down is the pricing review. This is by the Australian Energy Market Commission. And it's pushed ahead with probably the most contentious issue or part of its report, and that is its support for fixed network charges. This is the part of your bill which you can't really do much about. So it's essentially said that networks should charge customers a fixed price for connecting to the grid rather than recovering their costs based on how much electricity each consumer uses. Now, the energy consumers, you guys have been a bit of an outlier compared to some other consumer groups who've opposed this move.
Yeah.
Tell me why you support fixed network charges.
I think the first thing that was interesting coming through the commentary was there may be this confusion, maybe the poor word, but conflating of network tariffs and retail offers.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, network tariffs are recovered from retailers, right? They're not recovered from customers. People don't pay network tariffs. Ultimately, your retailer does. If you're a nerd, you can, like me, you can look at AGL's profit annual statement. You look at their financial report. The first line is revenue. Their major cost item is network costs. So it's just a cost. Ultimately, it's something paid by retailers. So we just need to be cautious by when we're calling for reforms to network tariffs. Some people may actually be saying what they want retail prices or plans to look like when they serve different purposes, right? So yeah, we agree with that. Well, the AMC's principle, which they kind of mentioned at the end, was around retailers should be ultimately accountable for market offers. It's up to retailers what they do with network tariffs. And firstly, as we all know, many retail offers do not actually pass through network tariff structures anyway, right? That issue kind of emerged recently, so that the AER's recent default market offer decision, for the first time they had to design a actual tariff. So previously it was a benchmark annual bill, but now they had to develop a bottom-up fixed charge and consumption price. When they did that bottom-up build, assuming direct pass-through of all the costs, they calculated their fixed charges to be much higher than what was in the market, and conversely, the consumption price was a lot lower. So that actually shows that suggests rather that retailers were maybe actually recovering more costs through consumption prices rather than what the network tariff or these other fixed costs would suggest. So again, it just highlights that issue here. Obviously, network tariffs are really important, right? As they're around a third to 40% of retail energy bills, and they do influence retail offerings for that reason because they're so big. From our perspective, we need to make sure they influence retail offers in the right ways, nudge market offers, to do good things, not to create some perverse outcomes. If we think about where we're at today, network costs are primarily recovered via consumption prices, as you know.
Yeah.
There's good reasons why that's happened. It's just interesting, the network doesn't and never has sold you electricity, right? You buy out from a retailer, but we've historically, for several legacy reasons, for example, metering issues, when we had the basic accumulation meters, you just recover network costs on a consumption basis. I think we all agree that retail offers of some combination of fixed and variable charges is going to be suitable. I guess you can then have a discussion around what should be in that fixed, what should be in that variable, what the balance is. We fundamentally view it from the perspective of, okay, how should networks recover their costs from retailers? We think a main principle for us is cost reflectivity. So if a network assigns a cost to an action or to something, it should be commensurate with what it actually costs them to do so. Sadly, networks do a lot of things. Connecting households, right? A new property development comes out. They've got to spend money to connect those households. They've got to prune trees on lines and things like that. So there is a large portion of network costs that are kind of irrespective of your consumption in some way. You can debate if it's high or low. What we actually want to happen is we kind of want to see a couple of things. We want basically consumption prices to fall most of the time, because most of the time we don't think there is much of a cost on the network of consumption. This is to the retailer. But what we do want is much higher network export prices to actually, if you've got a battery and CER, if you export at that peak time and are reducing network costs, you should be compensated for that. At the moment, not many networks have export prices, or if they do, they're very low.
Yeah.
And when I mean price, I mean export rewards. If you're exporting at at a peak time, you should be by the network. And we talk about symmetrical tariffs. So if a network is going to assign a customer a 30-cent peak charge, which is common in some networks, well, that household should be given 30 cents for exporting at the same time. Why not? If it costs that much to consume at that time, then you should receive that benefit. A consequence of all those things is we do think networks would have to increase fixed charges to do that. We do want networks to introduce differentiated fixed charges. So by that I mean we don't have currently networks set the same fixed charge for every household, regardless of its circumstances. We think there is probably a scope for reform about how that's done, and we're doing a bit of thinking on that. But that's sort of our thinking on network tariffs. It's we've done a lot of engagement in the last couple of months on this, and I think you'll find that people are more aligned than what I maybe let out. I think we all want the same outcomes. We want to reward CER, for really reducing network costs. Basically, at the moment, these network tariffs aren't directing demand response to those very instances where it's very needed. So we're like, we just really want to nudge network tariffs in the right way. So when retailers bundle them, there's opportunity for them to include them in a VPP and do these other sort of innovations that could come so we can really limit network costs in the long term. Like I said at the start, there is some proportion of network costs that are fixed in some way. We just don't think recovering via consumption prices is maybe fit for purpose anymore, or as fit for purpose as it once was. So that's why we supported broadly the increase in fixed charge, but only with those other conditions.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? Because
Yeah, it
it's
really is. Yeah.
it's just too complicated yet again.
Yeah, I know.
IEFA, their modelling found that households,
Mm.
who have forked out the money, who've invested in energy efficiency upgrades, the solar panels, the batteries, and they might, as a result, have, low consumption from the
Yeah.
grid. These higher tariffs, these higher fixed network tariffs,
Yeah.
they're going to wipe out the benefit of them investing. It will be a longer payback period, and then we've got the issue of it's going to wipe out potentially the benefit of the government rebate for the batteries.
Yeah, so I think two things I'd say to that, which is right, and the AMC will address this, was if we did this transition, it should be slow because, yes, if someone's dropped a significant amount of money in response to government policy, people have spent a lot of money on batteries, yes, it's unfair for them, their investment to be, pulled out from under them. 100%. What we think about with these reforms, though, is if we have much higher export prices, yes, fixed charges may rise, but you get these other benefits that come through by exporting. If you export at the right times or you have a demand response when it's needed, you can get compensated for that. Equally, if we have lower consumption prices in the middle of the day, well, these solar share offers become much easier. There's no network tariff telling you not to consume in the middle of the day. There might be instances where there's so much solar, wholesale prices drop to negative, but you've got this big network tariff that's saying no, telling retailers no, there's a cost to consumption when maybe that isn't the case. So yes, a simple shift to fixed tariffs without doing these other things would undermine some of these investments, but we think there's all these other opportunities there. And it's just about more so it's changing how that benefit is earned. Yeah, so rather than using a battery just to self-consume fully, you can get these other, to which case you should always get that benefit. If you're not buying electricity from the grid, 100%, why should you pay a consumption price to your retail?
So take my circumstances. We invested in a battery at the end of last year under the Cheaper Home Battery Scheme, and we put on some extra solar. And our aim pretty much is not to draw from the grid at the moment. But our retailer has just jacked up the supply charge, the network charge. What we understand is the network charge.
Yeah, and so when you say network charge, that's an interesting point I was going to raise. Yeah, I think if you asked someone on the street why they pay their retailer a fixed charge, I assume a lot would think that is money to pay for the infrastructure that provides them their electricity. But people don't realize that no, actually most of those costs are recovered through their consumption price. And that's where it's very interesting. It's, if we think about this, potential next 10 years and this transition to renewables, what we can have is we're going to have periods of very low wholesale prices, often negative, and just lower cost energy likely altogether. When you have network tariffs in the consumption price as well, it can kind of counteract that. So people don't actually see this, but they don't see the actual retail price drop. So they might hear that wholesale prices are cheaper, great, but then when they go see their consumption price rise, it may be confused by that. So that's the other interesting part about what the AMC was proposing. It's maybe thinking about, well, what is in that fixed charge and what is in that retail price, so people can more, the fixed charge pays for the infrastructure, and then your consumption price, actually pay, is what actually is the cost of you buying electricity at a given point in time.
Well, the thing is that, they are going to, retailers and networks are going to have to attract people. They're going to have a value proposition. They're going to have a good deal for people with batteries to do those exports. So like you say, they've got to, have much higher export prices.
Yeah. And that's what we want to see in innovation in the market. And it's potentially exciting. I think that's where everybody is aligned. The opportunity here is really to go away from this large scale, big gas plants, peaker plants that can be very expensive, for the rare instances that you really need them and wholesale prices spike. If we can use the existing resources we have, these batteries that are on people's homes, we can save costs for everybody. And those people benefit too. They can go earn that really high wholesale price. Go on them. Of course they should.
Just a final question. How optimistic are you that consumers will benefit for buying these consumer energy resources and supporting the grid? How optimistic are you?
I think a lot of people are benefiting now as a result. What is very interesting, I find, is, so we find in our survey that around 60 to 70% of households, regardless of their financial circumstances, are saying they are avoiding using heating and cooling. What I think is so interesting about these large batteries and solar, that's been combined with solar, is it gives people the opportunity to live a very comfortable life, to not maybe fret about when they use the heating and things like that. Yeah, so and we often focus on people saving money, and obviously that's the main motivation that people have for buying solar and batteries. But I'm also very interested in the ways it can lead to broader benefits for everybody as well. I think people are benefiting today. There's price changes that could have come that we support a long lead time to do so. But for us on this pricing debate, it's about just thinking about the future. What if 20 years time we have 20% of homes with solar and a battery system? How do we price that? What do we do, and how can we kind of make that fairer for everybody?
Yes, fairer for everybody. Ashley Bradshaw, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thanks very much, Anne.
And Ashley Bradshaw is the Executive Manager of Analysis and Advocacy at Energy Consumers Australia, ECA. Thanks for joining me today on Switched On. I'm Anne Delaney, and I'll be back next week with more news and views on the energy transition and the electrification of everything. See you then. Switched On Australia was proudly brought to you by AMP Control, an Australian manufacturer combining engineering expertise, electrical solutions and innovative technologies to enable Australia's energy future. Switched On Australia is also proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. And Switched On Australia was also brought to you by GoodWe. GoodWe's all-in-one ESA home battery helps Australians store more of their own solar energy and rely less on the grid. With strong local support and technology already trusted in thousands of homes, GoodWe is making the switch to electrification simpler and more affordable. GoodWe is proud to work with Australian cricketer and GoodWe ambassador Alex Carey. Find out more at goodwe.com.au.